This is Fitness Splinter's rotator cuff workout. All you're going to need for this routine is a resistance band, but just make sure you start with an extremely light weight. We're going to be doing one round of 7 different exercises and 20 repetitions for each exercise, though you may want to start with fewer repetitions. Let's go ahead and get started with the first one, the medial external rotation. You're going to want to anchor that resistance band to the wall or door at about elbow level. Get ready? And begin. You want a nice slow rotation of that fist from across your stomach to outside, pointing away from your torso. The two most important things to focus on is making sure that that forearm stays perfectly perpendicular to the ground and that that upper arm stays directly underneath that shoulder joint. So that elbow is directly underneath that shoulder the entire time. Never let that elbow kick out or drift forward or backward. The best way to do that is keep that elbow tucked nice and close to your rib cage the entire time you're doing this motion, trying to keep it as stationary as possible, only rotating around that shoulder socket. We're almost done. One more. And let it relax. All right, go ahead and switch sides. You're going to turn 180 degrees. Swap that handle into that opposite hand. We're going to do the same exact motion. Get ready. And begin. So doing that same exact motion, just in the opposite hand. Nice and slow, rotating that arm out away from you, keeping that upper arm perfectly stationary directly underneath that shoulder, keeping that forearm perfectly parallel to the ground. This is a nice, slow, controlled motion, opening that arm up as wide as you can, as wide as is comfortable, then nice and slow, bringing it back in. Make sure you're using a very, very light weight with this one, especially if you're new to doing these exercises. Those rotator cuff muscles don't take much to get tired. As they do get tired, you want to really be careful not to jerk your hand out to the side. As soon as you start doing that, stop. You don't need to do any more repetitions, otherwise you're going to increase your chances for injuring that rotator cuff even more. Almost done. And go ahead and let it relax. Alright, our next one is the medial internal rotation. So it's the same motion, just pulling that band in this time instead of pulling out. Go ahead and get ready. And begin. Upper arm perfectly straight up and down, forearm perpendicular to the ground. Nice and slow, pull that hand into your chest, then slowly let that band pull that arm back out as far as is comfortable, then right back in again. Now you're going to feel much, much stronger in this position, but don't worry about trying to use more weight. Just worry about doing a lot of repetitions. You want to actually build up that endurance to that rotator cuff rather than just overall strength. Once you have that endurance, then you can start focusing on building up strength, but those rotator cuff muscles are really small, so you're never going to be able to use a whole lot of weight. Just got a few more repetitions. And one more. And let it relax. All right, go ahead and switch sides, swap hands, and turn 180 degrees. We're going to be doing the same thing on the other hand, that internal rotation. Go ahead and get ready. And begin. A nice slow pull in towards that torso. Again, making sure you're keeping that elbow directly underneath that shoulder. Now with that band pulling your arm off to the side, you're going to have more of a tendency to let that elbow kind of open up and drift off outside your body. Make sure you're tucking that elbow in really nice and close to that rib cage, keeping it directly underneath that shoulder the entire time. It's just as much range of motion as you can from your stomach out to the side without letting that elbow move. Just keep that motion going nice and slow under control. Almost done. And here's your last one right here. And let it relax. Alright, moving on to the next one. This is the ventral external rotation. This is a different position. That elbow's going to be up in front of that shoulder. Go ahead and get ready. And begin. The position is a little bit different, but the motion is identical. So that elbow's going to be directly in front of that shoulder this time. You want to be making a 90-degree angle off of your chest. That elbow is perpendicular to the ground, so that upper arm is perpendicular to the ground. And that forearm is going to be pointing straight up in the air or straight off to the side. So nice and slow, you're going to go from about chest level, perpendicular to the ground. Open that arm up out to the side, trying to get that forearm pointing either straight up in the air or possibly even pointing back away from you a little bit, all depending on how much flexibility you have in that shoulder joint. Now you want to control that motion, nice slow pull. Again, as that arm gets tired, you're going to want to actually jerk that band a little bit. Just make sure you're keeping a nice slow controlled motion, rotating that hand out. And there's your last one right there. Go ahead and let that one relax. We're going to switch sides. Go ahead and swap that hand, turn 180 degrees. Get ready. And begin. Go ahead and bring that elbow up to shoulder height. You want that upper arm perfectly 90 degrees off of that chest, and that elbow 90 degrees, so that forearm is 90 degrees off of that upper arm. Nice and slow, rotate, opening that hand up out to the side, slowly back down to perpendicular with the ground, and then right back up again. Just make sure you're looking at that arm, making sure that 90 degrees off that chest stays constant, making sure that elbow doesn't move in or out. Just a nice, slow, controlled motion back and forth. Almost done, just a couple more repetitions. And there's your last one right there. And let it relax. All right, and moving on to the next one. This is the ventral internal rotation. So same position we were just doing, but this time pulling in towards your body as opposed to away. Go ahead and get ready. And begin. Bring that arm back up into that same position. Elbow directly in front of that shoulder. Upper arm perpendicular to the ground. Make sure you have a 90-degree angle from that forearm to that upper arm, and a 90-degree angle from that upper arm to your chest. Nice and slow, pull that hand down to about perpendicular to the ground, then slowly let it come back up, letting that band pull that arm back as far as is comfortable. And remember, this internal rotation is going to be a lot easier than pulling that hand back out for that external rotation. So just keep it under control, nice and slow. You don't need to use extra weight. Just focus on more repetitions. You're almost done. Last one. And let it relax. All right, go ahead and switch sides. We're going to do the same exact thing on that opposite arm. Go ahead and get ready. And begin. Elbow up at that shoulder height, nice and slow, pulling that arm forward, keeping that upper arm as stationary as possible. You want it directly out from that shoulder joint. Nice slow pull down, slowly letting that arm drop back, stretching as far as is comfortable without letting that elbow move. Then nice and slow back down. Constantly watch that arm because it's going to want to wobble all over the place. Almost done. Just 2 more repetitions. Nice slow pull. And let it relax. All right, moving on to the next one. This is the lateral external rotation. So we're moving to a different position on this one. Go ahead and get ready. And begin. Facing down towards that band on this one. You want that elbow directly out from your side, making a straight line from shoulder to shoulder all the way out to that elbow. Try to keep that position as best you can. You want that upper arm completely stationary, directly in line with that chest, and that forearm 90 degrees off of that upper arm. Slowly rotating that hand forward as far as is comfortable, and then rotating it back, pulling against that band as much as you can, trying to get as much range of motion out of this as possible. Now this is going to be a really, really difficult motion to control, as well as a really difficult motion as far as overall strength. This is one of the weakest spots for that rotator cuff. We're almost done, just a few more repetitions. And here's your last one right here. And let it relax. We're going to go ahead and switch sides. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Go ahead and swap hands. Get ready. And begin. Pull that elbow back so it's in line with those shoulders. That upper arm so it's perpendicular to the ground. Forearm 90 degrees off of that upper arm. Then slowly pull that hand back as far as is comfortable. Slowly letting it drop back down as low as is comfortable. And then start again. Really watch that upper arm. It's going to be wobbling all over the place. And remember, only do as many repetitions as you control. As soon as that elbow starts to wobble out of your control, or if you're starting to jerk that band back, you've gone too far. You need to go ahead and stop. Let that rotator cuff rest, and just try to do a few more repetitions next time you do the routine. Almost done. This is your last one right here. And let it relax. All right, we're going to turn 180 degrees around for the lateral internal rotation. Doing that same position, just pulling that band forward rather than pulling it back. Go ahead and get ready. And begin. Nice straight torso. You want that elbow directly out from that shoulder, trying to get a nice straight line through those shoulders to that elbow. Upper arm perpendicular to the ground. Forearm 90 degrees off of that upper arm. Then slowly pull that hand forward. As much rotation as you can, then nice and slow. Let it fall back as far as is comfortable, letting that band kind of stretch that arm back a little bit. Just keep that motion going nice and slow under control. Remember, you don't want to ever feel like you're pulling or yanking that band down. You always want to have a nice, slow, controlled motion. Almost done, just a few more repetitions. One more. And let it relax. All right, go ahead and switch those hands. We're going to do the same exact motion on the opposite arm. Get ready. And begin. Remember, keep watching that form. That's the most important thing. Elbow up nice and high, just across from those shoulders. Upper arm perpendicular to the ground. Forearm 90 degrees from that upper arm. Slowly pulling that arm forward as far as you can, as far as it's comfortable. Then nice and slow, opening that arm back up behind you as far as you can let it stretch. Making sure there's a nice, slow, controlled motion, pulling that arm down. A nice, slow, controlled motion, letting that arm back behind you. Now, you probably noticed my position on this one. My hips are kind of kicked back. My chest is kind of forward. I'm doing this just to stabilize my upper body a little bit more, to give a nice, solid platform for that arm. And that's your last one right there. Go ahead and let it relax. We've got one more exercise. This is the rotational diagonal raise. Now make sure you're actually grabbing the band for this exercise rather than the handle. Go ahead and get ready. And begin. You're going to wrap that band around your foot, so that band is coming around the outside of that opposite foot from the arm you're using. That hand comes down to the outside of that opposite hip. That thumb facing back towards that hip joint. And then nice and slow, you're going to pull that arm up and out to the side. As you do so, that hand's going to rotate, and you're actually going to rotate back around so that thumb's pointing back behind you again. Nice and slow as you come back down, that thumb's going to rotate around again, coming back down, pointing back towards that hip. Now, it sounds like you're doing the same exact motion, but if you were to actually let that arm do whatever it wanted to, you'd end with that thumb kind of facing across your body, kind of pointing more towards the side of your head. So by turning that thumb back behind you, you're forcing your arm to rotate, which is targeting those rotator cuff muscles. Otherwise, if you just let that thumb point straight across, it's just going to be deltoid, that outside shoulder muscle. We're almost done, just a few more repetitions. You have one more. And let it relax. All right, we're going to switch sides. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Make sure you loop that band down around the outside of that opposite foot from the arm you're using. Go ahead and get ready. And begin. Remember, again, holding onto that band, not that handle. That thumb facing back towards that hip joint, nice and slow. Raise that arm up, rotating that arm around so that thumb ends facing back behind you. Then nice and slow, drop it back down, thumb facing back towards that hip joint. Now focus on keeping that motion under control, nice and slow. Make sure you're getting a full rotation on that arm, opening that hand up every single time. Also focusing on making sure that arm stays perfectly straight the entire time. The most you want is just a tiny little bit of a bend in that elbow. Keep that arm as straight as possible through this entire motion. Make sure you're using just a really nice light weight. If you start trying to use a really heavy weight, those shoulder muscles and that deltoid are actually going to start taking over, and those rotator cuff muscles aren't going to get as good of a workout. So the lighter the weight you use, the more those rotator cuff muscles are going to do the work. Almost done, just a few more repetitions. Got one left. And let it relax. All right, you just finished Fitness Blunder's rotator cuff workout.